The walls are already shaking. Stone cracks somewhere in the dark. Dust falls like snow. Men press themselves flat against cold rock, unsure if the next breath will be their last. No one can see where the sound is coming from, only that it's getting closer. A horn screams once, then stops. Boots pound, someone shouts a name, no one answers. The air smells wrong. Not smoke, not fire. Something heavier. Hands tighten around weapons that suddenly feel too small. Someone laughs short, sharp, not sane. Another man whispers a prayer he never learned properly. Then silence. Not peace. Waiting. A shadow moves where there shouldn't be one. Metal scrapes stone. A heartbeat passes, then another. From somewhere beyond the wall comes a sound no one can place. Not a scream. Not a command. Just pressure. Like the ground itself is leaning in. A man turns to speak. And freezes. Because the wall ahead of him is no longer solid. Because the night has teeth. And because whatever is coming does not slow down. Not for fear. Not for mercy. Not for numbers. As the ground trembles again, a single thought spreads from man to man. If this line breaks, there will be no retreat. Only disappearance. And when the dust finally settles and the noise fades and the roll is called, who will still be standing? And who will never be accounted for again? The year is 1565. Europe is locked in a struggle that has been building for generations, one defined not only by territory, but by belief, power, and control of the sea. The Mediterranean is no longer just a body of water. It is a battlefield, a trade artery, and a frontier where empires test each other's limits. To the east, an empire at its height, vast resources, hardened armies, commanders shaped by decades of conquest. Their fleets move like floating cities, and their banners are known from North Africa to the gates of Vienna. To the west, fractured kingdoms, rivalries, old grudges, and a small, stubborn military order clinging to relevance after being driven from their former strongholds. Between them lies a rocky island chain. Dry, harsh, seemingly insignificant. But its position is everything. Malta sits like a locked door between east and west. Whoever controls it can choke supply lines, disrupt fleets, and project power deep into enemy waters. For years, the island has been a thorn, small raids, sudden strikes, ships vanishing along key routes. Now patience has run out. Reports circulate of a massive force gathering. Numbers whispered in ports grow larger with every retelling. 40,000, more, less. No one agrees, but all agree it is coming. On Malta, preparations begin early, but never feel sufficient. The fortifications are strong on paper, stone walls, angled bastions, overlapping fields of fire. Engineers argue over measurements while soldiers haul rock under the sun. Supplies are counted and recounted. Every barrel matters. Every delay feels dangerous. Civilians are moved. Wells are secured. Signals are rehearsed. Still, uncertainty dominates everything. No one knows where the first blow will land. No one knows how long help will take to arrive, if it arrives at all. And no one knows whether the island can survive a siege of this scale. Rumors seep into daily life. Stories of cities erased, garrisons wiped out, prisoners marched away and never seen again. Some are exaggerated, some are not. The defenders understand one thing clearly. If Malta falls, the sea opens. This is not just a local fight, it is a test, a signal, a statement to the entire Mediterranean world. Yet for all the strategic importance, for all the maps and plans, the reality on the ground is simpler and more terrifying. A limited number of men against a force that does not need to hurry, on land that offers no escape. As sails begin to appear on the horizon and messengers stop arriving, the question is no longer if the siege will come, but whether anyone inside the walls truly understands what is about to begin. They are not many. Some are knights, bound by oath and reputation. Others are soldiers, sailors, locals, men who did not come for glory but stayed because there was nowhere else to go. Training begins before dawn. Armor is checked. Weapons are cleaned even when they don't need to be. Discipline is strict. Silence is enforced at times when nerves are most fragile. Orders are repeated twice, sometimes 3 times, not because they are unclear, but because repetition brings control. Daily routines become rituals. Guard rotations, wall inspections, equipment drills conducted in heat that drains strength before the day truly begins. Punishments are swift, not cruel but absolute. A missed post, a careless word, a moment of disobedience can cost lives. Everyone knows this. Everyone feels it. There is no room for individual fear, only collective survival. Among them are veterans of earlier campaigns, men who have seen cities burn and lines collapse. They say little. When they do speak, others listen. Newer recruits watch them closely, how they stand, how they sleep, how they react when distant sounds echo across the water at night. Emotion is contained, but not absent. Letters are written and rewritten, unsure if they will ever be sent. Some men carry small tokens, rings, scraps of cloth, religious symbols, kept hidden, touched only when alone. Meals are quiet, conversations short, laughter rare but sharp when it appears, like a sudden release of pressure. Everyone understands the imbalance. 8,000 defenders against an approaching force that could surround the island twice over. Yet no one says it out loud. Instead, they speak of walls, of angles, of discipline, of holding just one more day. Because in a siege, time is a weapon. At night, watchmen stare into darkness that feels too vast. The sea reflects moonlight in ways that distort distance. Sounds carry strangely. A splash can feel like movement, a movement like an attack. Sleep comes in fragments. And beneath everything, training, order, routine, there is a shared awareness. Once the first shot is fired, there will be no pause, no reset, no second attempt, only endurance, and the quiet understanding that some names spoken today will not be spoken again. The first warning does not arrive with noise. It arrives with delay. A signal lantern that should appear at dusk does not light. At first, no one reacts. The sea air is heavy, winds unpredictable. These things happen. A second lantern farther down the line appears on time, steady and calm, and the missing one is quietly noted as an inconvenience, nothing more. But by the next rotation, the absence becomes noticeable. Runners are sent. They return with nothing conclusive. The post is intact. The men assigned to it are present. They insist everything is normal. Their answers are short, too short. When pressed, they glance toward the water instead of the officer asking the questions. That night, sound begins behaving strangely. Drums are heard, faint, rhythmic, distant, too distant to locate. The tempo is unfamiliar. It stops abruptly as if cut off rather than fading away. When asked later, some guards claim they heard it. Others insist there was nothing at all. By morning, small details begin to feel out of place. A cannon crew reports their equipment shifted overnight, slightly misaligned, though no one recalls touching it. Footprints appear near a battery that was sealed after sunset. The prints are partial, unclear, and lead nowhere obvious before vanishing into rock. Officers mark these things down, separately, quietly. No alarm is sounded. As the days pass, the pattern grows harder to ignore. Lookouts report ships appearing farther offshore than expected, holding position without advancing. Then they vanish behind the curvature of the horizon, only to reappear hours later in slightly different formations. Too controlled to be coincidence. Too restrained to be an attack. Messenger routes are adjusted, not because of confirmed enemy movement, but because paths that once felt routine now feel exposed. Men report an inexplicable sense of being watched, even when no vantage point should allow it. Animals react before men admit their own unease. Dogs refuse to cross certain stretches of ground after sunset. Horses tense near specific walls, their breathing shallow, ears locked toward the sea. Handlers scold them, but the behavior repeats night after night. Sleep becomes unreliable. Men wake before horns are blown. Some claim they dreamed of vibrations, low, constant pressure rather than sound. Others wake with the feeling that time has passed incorrectly, as if the night skipped forward without warning. Veteran soldiers begin adjusting their habits. They check straps twice. They stand farther from openings. They stop telling jokes altogether. One evening, a senior officer orders a full equipment inspection without explanation. When asked later, he says only that too many things are arriving early, or not at all. Radio silence, where signals should exist, becomes the most unsettling sign. Messages expected from Allied ships are delayed beyond normal margins. Not lost, not intercepted, simply absent. When communication resumes, the wording is oddly restrained, stripped of detail, as if written by someone afraid to say too much. Within the walls, conversations shift. Men stop speculating about victory or relief. Instead, they argue quietly about timing, about angles of approach, about whether the first blow will come by land, sea, or somewhere in between. Maps are updated repeatedly, with markings that change daily. Not because intelligence improves, but because certainty disappears. Then comes the silence. Not the usual quiet of night, but something heavier, a stillness that presses inward. The sea reflects no movement. The wind dies without warning. Even insects seem absent. During this silence, a patrol fails to report back on schedule. Not late enough to panic, just late enough to notice. When they return, their numbers are correct, their equipment intact, but their manner has changed. They answer questions carefully, as if aligning their responses to something already decided. One man is missing from the patrol's roster, but his name is crossed out before anyone outside the command tent sees it. No explanation is given. By now, everyone feels it. The sense that the siege has already begun. Not with fire or steel, but with preparation unseen. Something is testing the walls. Something is measuring responses. And whatever it is patient. The defenders continue their routines. They follow orders. They hold positions. But beneath the discipline, beneath the silence, a shared realization takes hold. The warning signs are no longer subtle. They are deliberate. And whatever comes next will not announce itself. The incident begins without ceremony. No trumpet call, no bugle, no declaration, just a sudden shift in the world. The first sign is a sound, low, rolling, almost imperceptible at first. Then it grows, moving through stone, through air, through bones. A vibration that does not belong, a presence that cannot be measured by maps or calculations. Men freeze mid-step, eyes darting. Fingers tighten around hilts, but weapons feel absurdly small. The walls shudder, not violently, not with collapse, but with a resonance that hints at fragility. Dust drifts down from battlements, catching in lantern light. A sentry calls out, voice cracking, What is that?" And then the sound changes, multiplying. A chorus of movement impossible to track, footfalls from directions that should be empty. Whispers, maybe voices, maybe the wind. The air grows thick, as if it carries weight itself. Cannon crews react instinctively. A gun fires, the roar cracking through the morning haze. Men dive for cover. Another cannon answers from across the wall, then hesitates. The rhythm is broken. The defenders cannot predict where the next strike will land. Each volley seems to anticipate itself, as if the walls themselves are communicating in a language no one understands. Runners are sent between positions. Some vanish along the corridors and ramps, swallowed by shadows that seem darker than they should be. Others return disoriented, muttering incoherently about what they saw. Shouts fill the air, orders collide with fear. Hold, fall back, reinforce the north wall. No, the east. The words overlap, contradict each other, swallowed by the chaos. The men try to follow them, but movement becomes disjointed. Time itself seems fractured. Minutes stretch, collapse, and repeat in unpredictable ways. Somewhere in the central courtyard, something collapses. Not dramatically, not with thunder, just disappears. The earth seems to swallow it silently. Those nearby run toward the sound but find nothing, only the faint impression of where it might have been. Above, the walls are battered by strange projectiles, not entirely cannonballs, not entirely rocks. They bounce and ricochet in ways that defy understanding, yet do not kill outright. Instead, they erode certainty. Men cannot tell if the trajectory is intentional or random. They hesitate. Hesitation is deadly. Communication fractures entirely. Flags meant to signal reinforcements are ignored. Messengers cannot locate the posts they are supposed to reach. Compasses seem unreliable. The horizon warps in the haze. Distances are wrong. A unit moves north only to find themselves east of their original position. Another fires at an enemy that isn't there. Inside the walls, fear begins to take shape. Sweat drips from helmets, hands shake, and eyes widen as something moves across the battlements that should be empty. A shadow darts past a tower. It is gone before anyone can point. Someone swears they hear a chant, low and guttural, but the words mean nothing. The defenders push forward where they are told to hold. They retreat where they are told to advance. It is chaos masquerading as order. Then, as suddenly as it began, the noise dies. Not in the way a battle ends, not with victory or surrender. The world does not calm, it simply goes silent. Dust settles, shadows return to normal. The walls no longer tremble, birds resume flight. Even the wind returns, gentle, almost indifferent. Men call for comrades, names echo unanswered. Runners check positions. Gaps appear where men once stood. Some equipment is missing, some not. Nothing is destroyed outright, yet the impression of absence dominates. A head count begins and stops and begins again. Confusion replaces fear, then despair. Reports contradict each other. The missing are neither dead nor found. They have vanished, not captured, not wounded, not escaped, simply gone. The defenders move cautiously. They inspect battlements, courtyards, and storage rooms. Nothing explains the disappearance. There is no evidence of sabotage, no secret tunnels revealed, only silence and uncertainty. For hours, men remain in a state of alert. Every noise sparks instinctive flinches. Every shadow is suspect. The siege continues, yes, but something fundamental has changed. Whatever struck first, whatever caused men to vanish without trace, has left its mark. Not on stone, not on earth, but on perception, on certainty, on the fragile confidence of 8,000 men standing against 40,000. And in that quiet aftermath, only one thought spreads like a contagion through the defenders. The walls held. The numbers remain. But if this could happen once, what might happen next? No one has an answer. The incident is recorded in fragments, in hurried notes, in reports that try and fail to capture it. The day continues, but the memory lingers unshakable. It is not just a battle. It is a warning. And no one knows what it truly meant. Dawn arrives over Malta with a pale, hesitant light. The walls, still dusted with the remnants of yesterday's chaos, seem deceptively calm. But inside, the defenders move with tension sharpened to its edge. Every corner is examined, every post checked, every soldier counted. What happened yesterday cannot be ignored. The first action is simple, a head count, but it quickly unravels. Runners trace their steps back through corridors, courtyards, and narrow alleys. Names are called, but answers are inconsistent. Some men are present at multiple posts simultaneously according to different reports. Others appear missing entirely, their absence noted only when someone finally checks a ledger or roster. Confusion breeds urgency. Officers divide their men into search parties. Every tunnel, storeroom, armory, and guardhouse is inspected. Soldiers tap walls with mallets, prod dust piles, and peer into shadowed corners. Nothing explains the vanished figures. No footprints lead anywhere meaningful. No doors are broken. No barricades forced. It is as if the missing have evaporated, leaving only the faintest impression of movement behind. Reports begin to contradict each other. One unit claims to have heard the sound of distant marching, but the neighboring post insists they heard nothing. Another group swears a wall shook slightly, yet engineers note no structural impact. Every observation is questioned, every statement cross-checked. And yet, certainty remains elusive. Officers hold interrogations, not with cruelty but with relentless precision. They ask every man where he was, what he heard, who he saw, and what he touched. Responses vary. Memories clash. One soldier's account describes a corridor stretching farther than it should. Another swears he passed a sentry who shouldn't have been there at all. Answers are recorded, rewritten, and sometimes crossed out entirely. Meanwhile, messengers ride to nearby forts and ships. They seek confirmation. Did anyone else witness these events? Signals are delayed. Reports return incomplete, vague, or contradictory. Some letters never arrive. Others arrive months later, written in careful, cautious phrasing, avoiding any admission that might suggest disorder. Even the logs of the siege begin to shift. Dates are altered. Entries are erased. Where there should be clarity, there is instead a fog. Officers note the discrepancies but provide no public explanation. Not yet. Searches extend to the water's edge. Patrols scan coves and landing points. Boats are checked. Nets and traps are examined. Nothing accounts for the missing men. Not a single trace. The higher command convenes in a war room. Maps are spread across tables. Pins mark positions. Reports are read aloud. Officers debate timing, placement, and sequence. Yet every calculation encounters a ghost. What has vanished cannot be measured, cannot be located, cannot be reconciled with strategy or expectation. Even among the most seasoned soldiers, unease grows. Veteran knights whisper of events from prior campaigns, similar gaps in records, unexplainable absences, but none offer solutions. Those stories, once dismissed, now carry weight. Experience clashes with reality and uncertainty takes root. And then the subtle sense of secrecy emerges. Some reports are marked confidential. Certain officers disappear from the public record for days at a time. Documents that once existed cannot be found later. Runners report instructions that seem almost contradictory, to search thoroughly, yet to leave certain areas undisturbed. The siege continues, but the psychological toll is palpable. Soldiers hold tighter to their weapons. Eyes scan corners more often. Silence becomes a tool as well as a shield. Rumors begin to circulate, whispers that some of the missing may have been taken, not by the enemy, but by circumstances deliberately concealed. Yet no one confirms it. For those within the walls, the incident has already shifted reality. The numbers remain, the fortifications stand, and the siege carries on. But the sense of control, the belief that every soldier, every wall, every cannon could be accounted for, has vanished. No one can say exactly what happened. Official reports use words like unaccounted for or discrepancies noted. These entries, clinical and calm on paper, cannot capture the tension, the uncertainty, the fear of those walking the walls. By evening, the searches conclude for the day. Men return to their posts, exhausted, their minds crowded with questions that have no answers. Officers meet in private, reviewing notes, cross-referencing statements, and erasing what seems unnecessary. A deliberate obscuring takes place, silent but purposeful. The island endures, but a subtle, persistent truth remains. Some events of the siege cannot be explained by maps, orders, or reports. Some absences are never clarified. Some shadows cannot be chased away, no matter how thoroughly the defenders search. And in that uncertainty, the story of the Great Siege of Malta deepens, proof that even the most disciplined and prepared army can encounter moments that defy comprehension. With the searches concluded and the missing unaccounted for, speculation begins. Whispered rumors within the walls evolve into theories, and historians centuries later will still argue over the events. No single explanation can satisfy every detail. No record survives that definitively tells the truth. Some argue the incident was simply the result of panic and confusion. Perhaps an unexpected collapse, a misfired cannon, or a poorly timed maneuver caused the temporary vanishing of men and disruption of posts. In the chaos of battle, it is plausible that fear magnified minor errors, making them appear larger than reality. Yet even this theory struggles to explain the scale of the disruption. Men vanish without trace. Positions are misreported. Reports from multiple units contradict each other in ways that cannot be attributed to mere panic. If it were a simple accident, surely more evidence, cannon damage, breaches, corpses, would remain. Another theory suggests that the defenders themselves may have unknowingly caused the chaos. A hidden structural weakness, a secret passage, or internal sabotage could have created an unrecorded collapse or disruption. Some maps from the period hint at tunnels beneath the fortifications, though no official record confirms their use. This theory is supported by the rapid erasure of certain logs and the vague instructions to avoid disturbing certain areas during searches. Yet there is contradiction here as well. Engineers and veteran soldiers insist no breach existed. Nothing in the stones, timber, or plans indicates a structural failure that could account for the missing men. And those involved in the supposed sabotage were either loyal knights or seasoned soldiers unlikely to risk their lives for secret advantage. A third theory points outward, toward the approaching force of 40,000 men. Perhaps the attackers used an unprecedented tactic, one that the defenders could not perceive or measure. Some accounts describe strange sounds, shadows moving where they should not, and other sensory anomalies. Could an unknown weapon, a coordinated feint, or psychological warfare have caused the defenders to misreport or misplace themselves in the chaos? The problem is that no records from the attackers' side survive to corroborate this. Ships, flags, and troops are reported in formation, but no description of extraordinary measures is found. Perhaps the truth was intentionally left unrecorded. Perhaps what happened was too chaotic for anyone to report accurately. The final theory is the most unsettling. Some historians suggest that what occurred was never meant to be explained, by design. Certain orders were classified. Some witnesses were silenced. Logs were altered, pages erased, and names removed. If the incident exposed a vulnerability in strategy, morale, or internal trust, admitting it could have undermined the defenders more than hiding it ever could. This would explain why reports remain contradictory and why centuries later, so little clarity exists. But deliberate secrecy raises questions of its own. Why risk leaving gaps in communication and record-keeping? Why allow rumors to flourish among men sworn to discipline? And if the truth was so sensitive, why not provide some controlled narrative? The contradictions suggest either that secrecy failed, or that the full explanation is lost to time. Across all theories, one fact remains: nothing aligns perfectly. Each explanation has supporting details, and each is undermined by contradictions, missing documents, or silenced voices. Witnesses disagree. Logs disappear. Evidence is vague or erased. The walls of Malta, the stones themselves, seem to hold fragments of the answer. But whether these fragments point to error, sabotage, enemy ingenuity, or deliberate concealment is impossible to determine. And so the incident remains both recorded and unrecorded, observed and unseen, explained and unexplainable. Some files referenced in later correspondence were classified. Some testimonies hint at events that should not be spoken of. Official records remain inconsistent. Pages are missing. Names are crossed out. And centuries later, historians still debate which theory, if any, comes closest to the truth. The Great Siege of Malta is often remembered for heroism, endurance, and numbers. Yet beneath the surface lies a shadow of uncertainty, a moment in which men vanished, reports conflicted, and reality itself seemed to falter. No single theory can claim absolute authority. No document can fully capture what occurred. The incident remains a puzzle, a lingering question, and a hidden truth that resists clarity. And that is the lesson of Step 7. History records what it can, but some events defy recording, leaving only theories, whispers, and the uneasy knowledge that not all truths are meant to be revealed. The walls of Malta still stand. Stone upon stone, bastion upon bastion, the fortifications endure centuries later, a testament to resilience and strategy. History celebrates the victories, the heroism, and the narrow margins that allowed 8,000 men to withstand 40,000. Maps preserve the dates, the troop movements, the numbers of the fallen and the victorious. But not everything was recorded. Some events refused chronology. Some absences refused explanation. Names vanished quietly as if erased from memory before ink could mark them. Reports contradict each other. Pages are missing. Files once classified disappeared entirely, and those who might have spoken freely were bound by oath, loyalty, or fear. The siege continued and life carried on. Orders were followed. Walls were reinforced. Cannons fired. Yet the shadow of uncertainty never fully lifted. The incident, the sudden, unexplainable disruption, remained unaccounted for. It became a secret held by the stones, whispered among those who stood watch, a riddle no one could solve. We can analyze strategies. We can study formations. We can honor the courage of the defenders. But the gaps, the vanishings, the contradictions, they remind us that history is never complete. Some truths are not meant to be recorded. Some moments resist understanding. And so, centuries later, we are left with silence, a pause in the record, a question that persists: what truly happened in those moments of chaos? Was it panic, sabotage, enemy craft beyond comprehension, or something deliberately concealed to protect morale, honor, or strategy? The answer remains unknown. Perhaps it always will. And now, we turn to you, the witnesses across time. Look at the walls, listen to the echoes, imagine the shadows. Share your theories, piece together the fragments. Because the Great Siege of Malta is not only a story of survival and bravery, it is a story of mystery. And history always leaves some questions unanswered. What really occurred behind those walls? And who, if anyone, was meant to survive the memory?